One of the time-honored traditions at commencement ceremonies around this country is the delivery of a commencement address. It is my honor to ask Erik Clemons, who along with the Attridges, we now proudly claim as honorary Albertus Magnus College alumni, to deliver the 2018 commencement address. Mr., or rather, Dr. Clemons.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. President Camille, fellow trustees, distinguished faculty, honored graduates, parents, friends, guests, it is a great honor and privilege to speak to you today and to share this very, very special day with you. I am thankful to God for allowing me to be a part of His most awesome plan, as He had us in mind to be together on this day for this occasion, well before we knew each other or even ourselves. It is not lost on me that I am the first commencement speaker in the last 10 years at Albertus Magnus College. So do know that I will keep my remarks very brief so not to mess up this new tradition going forward. Graduates, admittedly, I did not know what to say to you, as I'm sure you have heard it all before. For the last month, I've been really stressing and praying and asking God for the right words that I would share to you, because when I speak to the people, I take it very seriously. And I just could not pull it all together. And admittedly, for the first time, I really have to admit this, this is the first time I ever spoke from prepared remarks. I've never written down on paper what is in my heart. I just speak from it. I was really fighting against telling you about me, sharing a bit of my story, because I was afraid that this day I would make it about myself, and it's really about you. So I thought, do I share remarks about my three living heroes, Bill Graustein, Carlton Highsmith, or Sam Ward? Or do I share remarks about my beautiful wife and 4 daughters and our 9-month-old granddaughter, Mina? I chose not to because I didn't want to embarrass them, so I just added them to this speech so I could just mention them. Then I thought about what you all have fought through to achieve this day, what it must have taken day after day, night after night, studying, not being home. And I thought maybe you would want to know that the sum of your experiences, your failures, your tragedies, your victories, your overcoming, are the very things that brought me to this stage to speak. However, this past Wednesday morning, something really amazing happened to me. I received a card in the mail. It was from a woman. I didn't recognize the name because she just spelled her first letter of her name, the first initial. It was from a woman named Linda Clark, and Linda Clark had sent me a card because she had heard that I was getting an honorary degree in the commencement, doing the commencement address to you all. And Linda Clark was the woman who babysat me and lived across the projects, lived across the yard in the projects we lived in Norwalk, Connecticut. And in that card, she had a little picture of me graduating high school with her younger sister, who was also my babysitter, Nancy Clark. And Nancy had passed 5 or 6 years ago after a long fight with cancer. And I looked at that young man in the picture of 1984, graduating from Brian McMahon High School. And I started reflecting on who I've become and surviving issues wrought from poverty to now navigating the world of privilege. And I thought that my life is a direct representation of this fine academic institution. And what do I mean by that? I then thought about last year, someone called me and asked if I could come and meet them at this address where there was a mother and 3 kids, and the mother couldn't pay her rent and was poised to be evicted from her place, and the electricity in their house was turned off. And I looked at the suffering face of this mother, and looked at the pain on the 3 children's eyes, in their eyes. And I knew that this woman wanted me to help her in some way, and I knew that I couldn't help her, not even that day or days after, because the issues that they were dealing with are age-old issues of poverty that have decimated the dreams of people. And I started thinking about my own life, and because the woman reminded me of my mother, and it took me back to when I was 14 years old, and my father was mentally ill, and my sister and brother and my mother were living in a one-room in an apartment building. And I had no idea where my father was and had no plan for my life, and I knew, although I didn't think critically enough, but I knew that my life was in trouble. And in those 4 years, people jumped in to save my life. And it got so bad that every year of high school, I was at a different high school, because in those days, when you lived somewhere else, you lived where you went to school. There was no inter-district magnet. And so because we were always getting evicted, I always had to live somewhere else, then consequently always had to go to a different school. And then I made it through high school, having no idea how I made it through high school. Went to college for a semester, came home, and meandered, and finally found a job in the post office. And for 12 years, I worked in the post office sorting letters. But I always thought, as I know you are, what is my contribution to this world? What have I done to make the people who love me proud? And I had done nothing other than work. And so, like some of you, I went back to school. And for 4 years, I went full-time at Southern Connecticut State University, and finally got a degree in sociology, and really thinking about what my life could be, but always really believing in the power of goodness in the human spirit, that I knew that if God would allow me to make it out, then I would always come back and help people who were in the conditions I was able to overcome. And so from there, I graduated, and I kept my promise. And I had the opportunity to help build this incredible organization about 3 blocks from here called the Connecticut Center for Arts and Technology. And so in short, my life is a miracle, very much like your own. But I always remembered the promise that I made, that if God would allow me to see success as I have defined it, then I would make sure that I would really devote my life to saving other people. And so now, when I go back to that, looking at that apartment, it was the woman who, with the 3 kids, it was now 5 p.m. I had another appointment I had to get to at 5:30. I felt really guilty, but this next appointment at 5:30, I was to sit in here and discuss another problem. This conversation was headed by one of our U.S. senators, where the ticket to even listen to him was $500. And to hear his ideas on what the country needs to do as it relates to the current president's policies. And of course, I did not pay $500 to come listen to that. But as I sat in that large, huge living room, in that large, huge house, I realized I was only one of 3 people of color out of the 50. I continued to listen to the senator and others who had something to contribute to the discussion. I raised my hands a couple of times, and I waited anxiously to be called on because I had something to say. Finally, I saw a break in the dialogue because they would not acknowledge my hand. And I politely asked, how is it that you all can have a conversation about and strategize around what the country needs, and the country is not even represented in this room? And you all are talking about revolution in some sort, but there can be no revolution until there is reconciliation. Because the very things and the pains that y'all are talking about that you're experiencing that inspired this discussion, Black and brown and folks in poverty have been dealing with this all their lives. So how is it that now you can somehow create a new fight outside of the age-old fight of Black and brown people and folks living in poverty? Now, graduates, I share this story because, again, my life is a salient metaphor and representation of this fine institution. Meaning that the meeting with the family that was experiencing deep suffering due to poverty lived 2 blocks behind where I stand. The meeting with the U.S. Senator, where there was this huge house with huge rooms, is 2 blocks in front of me from where I stand. And I mention that because although both residents are 1/2 mile from one another, one back here, the one right there, their life conditions are a world apart. And I know God has called me, and I say called because the calling is the thing that chooses you. Your job is what you choose. I know that God has called me to speak truth to both existing worlds with deep hope that the power of goodness held within the human spirit holds sway over what has been identified as haves and have-nots. You see, I believe that no one will have peace until those who have nothing have enough. So I know that God has allowed me to be a bridge, that He has given me a language to speak to both worlds. And so like me, again, this university sits in the middle of those 2 worlds. And I am thankful to President Mark Camille for having the courage not to reach out, but to do real outreach. Thank you, sir. So as graduates of this fine institution, it is my belief that you all coming from this place that is smack dab in the middle of 2 worlds, that you have the amazing and scary task of ensuring that you find your calling, and that the power of goodness in your spirit bears witness to what is possible for those who society say don't matter. Because now you all educated folk, right? Now you all, although always have, but you have now a certified voice. So the question becomes, will you speak for those who can't speak for themselves? Will you fight for those who have now given up struggling and now are suffering? Struggling denotes a fight. Suffering denotes that they just don't care anymore. Will you do that? Will you do what you are called to do, which is the priority, as opposed to looking to make all the money that you can? I stand here before you having experienced a lot of success, and I've been blessed. And the money that I make is a result of what has happened for me. It was never the reason. It was never the reason. My existence, and I hope your existence, is about coming back to help those who will never have the opportunity to sit in the seat that you are sitting in, or don the caps that you are wearing, or even wearing these robes. That people are suffering. And believe me, not just folks who are living in poverty, folks who are living in opulence as well. So graduates, I implore you, 2 questions to consider. 1, what is your calling? 2, what will be the impact you make on this world? Because the world sorely needs you. And are you willing to love the people? Because you can't serve the people unless you love the people. And you can't love the people unless you know the people. And you can't know the people unless you're willing to sit in the suffering that they're experiencing, such that that suffering is redemptive. So I want you to consider those things as you are on your road to success. Congratulations to you all. Go win the world. Thank you. Thanks, man.
Thank you, Dr. Clemons, for your inspiring remarks, for your insights, and for your charge to our graduates.